Have you ever stopped and wondered, how did one piece of paper printed in the United States become powerful enough to control the price of your groceries in Africa, your rent in Asia, or your salary in Europe? Do you know that behind every US dollar bill lies a hidden story, one that includes ancient bartering, global wars, and secret financial strategies that shape the modern world? And what if I told you that even if you've never held a dollar in your hands, it's already influencing your life? Right now, every single day, welcome and what you'll learn. Welcome, dear listener, to another fascinating episode of Learn English Through Story. I'm so glad you're here, because today, you're not just learning English. You're unlocking the history of money, power, and influence, told in a way that's easy to follow, even for English learners. In this story, you'll travel through time, from the earliest days of human exchange to the rise of gold, coins, paper bills, and finally, the mighty US dollar. But this is not just a history lesson. This is a real story about how something so simple, money, became the most powerful tool in the modern world. And the best part, everything will be told in simple, clear English to help you understand and improve your listening skills at the same time. So if you're ready to learn, think deeply, and connect global events to your daily life, stay with me, because the journey we're about to take will open your eyes. Let's begin our journey by going back thousands of years to a time when there was no money, no coins, no paper bills, no banks, and not even the idea of a price. Imagine that world for a moment. If you needed food, clothes, or tools, you couldn't just walk into a store and pay. Why? Because money didn't exist yet. So how did people survive? How did they get what they needed? They used barter, the earliest form of trade. Barter means exchanging goods or services directly without using any kind of money. Let me give you an example. Imagine two people. One has a bag of rice. The other has fresh milk. They meet and talk. "I'll give you 5 kilos of rice," says the rice owner, "and you give me 2 liters of milk," says the milkman. They agree, shake hands, and the deal is done. That's barter. Simple, right? This system worked for a while. It was good enough when people lived in small villages and only needed basic things. But soon, as human life got more complex, big problems appeared. Problem 1. The double coincidence of wants. This sounds like a complicated phrase, but it's really simple. In barter, both people must want what the other person has at the same time. Let's say I have apples and you have a pair of shoes. I really need those shoes. But what if you don't like apples? What if you already have plenty of apples at home? Then there's no trade. Even if I need the shoes badly, the deal fails because you don't want what I offer. Problem 2. No standard value. How many bananas are equal to 1 chicken? Is 1 shirt equal to 5 liters of milk? Every person had their own opinion. There was no fixed system. This led to confusion, disagreements, and sometimes even arguments and fights. Without a common measure of value, people couldn't plan properly. No one knew what anything was really worth. Problem 3. Difficult to store and save wealth. Let's say you're a farmer and you have 50 kilos of wheat. That's your wealth. But how do you store it? Wheat can rot, be eaten by rats, or go bad over time. It's not easy to transport. You can't carry sacks of wheat with you everywhere you go. Imagine trying to buy a house with a cart full of corn. Clearly, this wasn't practical. Problem 4. Not suitable for big civilizations. As cities grew, people built temples, roads, markets, and governments. Societies became more organized and needed better systems. Barter was too slow and too messy. Imagine a builder needing wood, stone, and metal from 3 different people. If none of them want what the builder offers, the whole system falls apart. For a growing civilization, barter was a bottleneck. It slowed everything down. People realized they needed something better, something smarter. A new idea is born. Humans began to ask important questions. What if we had something everyone accepts? Something that's easy to carry, doesn't rot, and represents value. Something we can use anytime, anywhere, no matter what we're buying or selling. That was the beginning of a new concept, money. But before paper money and coins, before dollars or yen or euros, early humans began by using natural items that were seen as special. Early forms of money around the world. In different parts of the world, people started to agree on certain items that could be used like money. In Africa and China, people used cowrie shells. Small, beautiful shells found in oceans. They were rare, shiny, and easy to carry. In Europe, some tribes used salt as money. That's right, salt. It was very valuable at the time because it preserved food. In India, people traded with wheat grains, spices, and later silver. Why these things? Because they were rare, not easy to find everywhere. Portable, you could carry them easily. Trusted, everyone agreed they had value. These early currencies were the stepping stones to the world's financial systems today. But humans didn't stop there. They discovered something even more powerful than shells, salt, or spices. As people continued to trade, they realized that items like shells, salt, and spices were useful, but they still had limitations. These items were fragile, could lose quality over time, and sometimes weren't practical for large or long-distance transactions. And then came a brilliant discovery: metals. People across different civilizations began to notice that gold, silver, and copper had incredible qualities. They didn't rot or spoil. They were easy to carry and store. They could be melted, reshaped, and even worn as jewelry. And most importantly, they were shiny. Humans have always been attracted to shiny things, and these metals, especially gold, felt special. They looked beautiful, felt heavy and valuable, and were rare in nature. So a powerful idea was born. What if we used these metals as money? The first coins in human history. The answer to that question came around 600 BC in an ancient kingdom called Lydia, located in what is now modern-day Turkey. A wise and forward-thinking king named Alyattes made history. He created the first coins the world had ever seen. These coins weren't just melted blobs of metal. They were carefully crafted using a natural metal called electrum, a mix of gold and silver. And here's what made them truly special. Each coin had an official stamp, a royal mark that proved it was real. It had a fixed value. Everyone knew exactly what it was worth. It came from a trusted authority, the king himself. For the first time, people could see, touch, and trust a standard unit of money. Why people loved coins. Once coins entered the market, they quickly became popular across different civilizations. Why? Because coins were easy to carry. No need for bulky sacks of rice or salt. Easy to count, no confusing calculations or debates. Hard to fake. The royal stamp showed it was genuine, trusted, backed by kings, governments, or temples. Suddenly, buying and selling became faster, simpler, and safer. No more, how many bananas for a chicken? No more, do you want apples or not? Coins created a shared language of value, and trade began to flourish. The spread of coins across the world. The idea of using coins spread like wildfire. In India, coins made of silver and copper were stamped with the symbols of kings and ancient dynasties. In China, coins were round with a square hole in the middle, making them easy to tie together with rope. In Rome, soldiers were paid in coins, and this is where the word salary comes from, salarium, which originally referred to salt money given to Roman soldiers. As great empires expanded, Rome, the Maurya Empire in India, the Han Dynasty in China, their coins became tools of trade, governance, and an influence. Coins go global, trade routes, and world connections. Coins didn't just stay within borders, they traveled. Thanks to famous trade routes like the Silk Road, coins moved across deserts, mountains, and seas. Indian traders brought silver coins to China. Arab merchants carried gold coins across Africa. European explorers collected coins from Asia and the Middle East. Coins became the first truly global currency, recognized, respected, and reused across continents. For centuries, this system ruled the world of trade. But of course, no system is perfect. The problems with coins. As useful as coins were, they had their own set of challenges. Resource dependence. You need precious metals to get coins, and metals like gold and silver are rare and expensive. Fraud and corruption. Some rulers began cheating, making coins with less gold and more cheap metals, while pretending they had full value. Weight and risk. Carrying large amounts of coins was heavy and dangerous. Imagine a merchant traveling with 10 kilograms of gold coins from India to China. That's not just tiring, it's risky. Bandits and thieves could attack at any time. Slow counting. Buying big things, like land, ships, or armies, required thousands of coins. Counting them took forever. Trade needed to be faster. People needed something lighter, quicker, and even more secure. And once again, the next breakthrough came from the East. As coins became more common, trade expanded. Empires grew, markets grew louder and busier. But a new problem started to appear. Coins were heavy. Yes, they were reliable, valuable, and widely accepted. But they were also difficult to carry in large amounts. Imagine being a trader during the Tang Dynasty in ancient China, around the 7th century. You're buying tea, silk, spices, and porcelain from different parts of the empire. Business is booming. But every trade requires you to carry a bag filled with copper or silver coins. That bag gets heavy. It slows you down. It also makes you a target for thieves. So what did the brilliant minds of China do? They started looking for a smarter, lighter solution. The birth of paper money, a revolutionary idea. To solve the problem, Chinese merchants and local governments began using a clever system. They created promissory notes, simple pieces of paper with promises written on them. The idea was this. You give your coins to a trusted official or trader. They give you a paper note saying, "This note equals 10 coins." You can later return with the paper and get your coins back. It was basically an IOU. I owe you. Backed by a real deposit. This simple idea was a game changer. Why? Because it meant you could trade without carrying coins. The paper represented real money and was easier to carry, easier to hide, and far safer. The government steps in. Paper money becomes official. By the time of the Song Dynasty, around the 11th century, the Chinese government realized the power of the system. So, they took control and made it official. They began printing paper money, called jiaozi, the world's first government-issued currency made from paper. It wasn't just an experiment. It became a serious part of the Chinese economy. But of course, one big question remained. How can people trust a piece of paper? That's when the government made 3 smart moves to build trust. 3 smart steps to build trust in paper money, backed by real metal. The government guaranteed that each note could be exchanged for silver or gold. That gave people confidence. The paper had real value behind it. Security measures. They used seals, stamps, and official marks to prevent forgery. Fake notes were difficult to make, and people could recognize the real ones easily. Strict punishment for fakes. Making counterfeit money was a serious crime, with severe punishment. That fear kept fake money out of the system, most of the time. With these steps in place, paper money worked, and trade became faster and safer. Economic boom. Paper powers prosperity. As a result of this innovation, China's economy exploded. Trade became faster. Markets grew. Businesses flourished. A silk merchant could now carry 50 notes in his sleeve instead of a bag of coins. A farmer could sell grain, receive a note, and use it to buy tools in another town. A traveler could move freely without worrying about being robbed of heavy metal coins. China became the most advanced trading economy in the world at that time. And yet, the rest of the world didn't understand it. Not yet. A visitor from the West, Marco Polo's surprise. In the 1200s, a young man from Europe named Marco Polo visited China. He was amazed by what he saw. Roads filled with trade, markets using paper money, and a system so efficient it felt like magic to him. When he returned to Europe, he told stories of this strange paper that people used instead of gold or silver. People in Europe laughed. They didn't believe him. Paper money? That's nonsense, they said. But Marco Polo wasn't lying. He had witnessed the future. Europe begins to catch up. Slowly. It took a few hundred more years for Europe to adopt a similar system. But eventually, they did. By the 1600s, goldsmiths in London started keeping people's gold in safe vaults. In return, they gave receipts, notes that said, "You have 10 gold coins with me." Soon, people began to use the receipt itself to buy things. Instead of handing over gold, they gave the paper. And just like that, paper money arrived in Europe, more than 400 years after China had already perfected the system. Later, banks copied this idea and banknotes were born. But just like in China, one big question remained. Can we trust this paper? And that leads us to the next part of the story, where gold comes back into play. By now, paper money was slowly taking root across major parts of the world. From the great markets of ancient China to the growing cities of Europe, people were finally beginning to accept the idea that a piece of paper could represent real value. But there was still one big problem. How do I know this paper isn't just paper? After all, without something valuable behind it, couldn't governments just print more paper and make it worthless? The answer came in the form of something that had always held people's trust, something shiny, rare, and respected across all cultures and kingdoms: gold. The gold standard, turning paper into promise. To build global confidence in paper money, governments created a system called the gold standard. Under this system, every piece of paper money was backed by a fixed amount of gold. That meant if you had a banknote, you could walk into a bank and exchange it for the exact value in real gold. Let's break it down simply. If you had $100, you could go to the bank and get 100 worth of gold. In the US, for example, $1 was backed by 23.222 grains of gold. That's about 1.5 grams. The value was fixed, and everyone knew exactly how much gold their money was worth. This system created something priceless in economics: trust, global adoption, a standard for the world. The gold standard wasn't just a local idea, it became a global agreement. Major countries like United Kingdom, France, Germany, United States all followed it. That meant international trade became much easier. You could send paper money across borders. Everyone knew that paper was backed by real gold. Currencies became stable and reliable. It was a golden era, literally and financially. Stability, prosperity, and simplicity. With the gold standard in place, the world saw unprecedented economic growth. International trade boomed. Currency exchange was clear and predictable. Inflation was kept low. Savings held their value over time. People felt secure. They trusted the system. But just like every system, this one also had its limits. And its breaking point, a world in chaos, the gold standard under fire. Then came a disaster that would shake the entire world economy. World War I, from 1914 to 1918. Nations needed huge amounts of money to fund the war, to pay for weapons, soldiers, ships, and supplies. But here was the problem. They didn't have enough gold to match the money they needed to spend. So what did they do? They printed more money, but without increasing their gold reserves. At first, it seemed like a solution, but soon, cracks began to show. The collapse of confidence, when paper lost its power. By printing money without gold, governments broke the gold standard. Here's what happened next. Inflation exploded. Prices rose quickly. People lost trust in money. It felt like holding paper, not value. In some places, a loaf of bread cost 100 times more in just a few months. After the war ended, countries tried to go back to the gold standard, but it wasn't the same. The damage was done. People were nervous. Economies were unstable. And then came an even bigger blow. The Great Depression, another hit to the gold system. In the 1930s, the world was hit by the Great Depression, a severe economic crisis. Banks failed. Businesses shut down. Millions lost their jobs. Once again, governments needed to act. Many countries abandoned the gold standard entirely, choosing instead to print money freely to try to stimulate their economies. The gold standard, once the world's symbol of trust and stability, was now on life support. And then came the biggest war of all. World War II, the end of an era, the rise of a new one. From 1939 to 1945, the world was torn apart again by World War II. Cities were destroyed. Economies collapsed. But one country stood out, stronger than ever before, the United States of America. Why? The war did not happen on U.S. soil. The U.S. produced weapons, food, and supplies for many nations. It had the largest gold reserves in the world, especially at Fort Knox. Its economy was booming while others were rebuilding, while other countries were in ruins. The U.S. became the new center of global finance. And so, as the war came to an end, leaders from around the world gathered to answer one big question. How do we rebuild the global economy? That meeting, and its decision, would change the financial world forever. After the devastation of World War II, the world was in ruins, cities were destroyed, millions of lives lost, and economies shattered. Countries were exhausted, physically, emotionally, and financially. But one nation stood tall above the rest, the United States of America. Unlike Europe and Asia, the U.S. was not bombed. Its industries had been working non-stop to produce weapons, machines, and food for other countries. By the time the war ended, the U.S. held nearly 2/3 of the world's gold. Its economy was booming, its factories were running, its banks were full. So naturally, when the time came to rebuild the global financial system, all eyes turned to America. The Bretton Woods Conference, a new financial order. In July 1944, even before World War II officially ended, delegates from 44 countries gathered in a quiet town called Bretton Woods, in the U.S. state of New Hampshire. Their mission? Let's build a new system that can stabilize the world economy, prevent future crises, and promote international trade. But to do that, they had to answer one major question. What currency should become the center of the new system? And the answer became clear very quickly: the U.S. dollar. Why? Because the U.S. had the largest gold reserves. Its economy was the strongest and most stable. Most countries owed money to the U.S. and trusted its power. The Bretton Woods system, dollar becomes king. So, the countries agreed to a bold plan, now called the Bretton Woods system. Here's how it worked. The U.S. dollar would be linked directly to gold. $35, 1 ounce of gold. Anyone holding dollars could exchange them for gold at that fixed rate. All other countries would fix their currencies to the U.S. dollar. That means if you had British pounds, French francs, or Japanese yen, they were all tied to the dollar, which was tied to gold. In other words, the U.S. dollar became the global middleman, a bridge between currencies and gold. And just like that, the U.S. dollar became the world's official reserve currency. A new financial map. Everything priced in dollars. With this system in place, world trade became more stable and efficient. Countries held dollars in their central banks instead of gold. International trade was priced in dollars. Oil, wheat, gold, cars, electronics, all based on the value of the dollar. The dollar became the measuring stick for value, trade, and global finance. This was the birth of the modern dollar empire, economic growth and global trust. The Bretton Woods system brought a new era of trust and predictability. Exchange rates were fixed. Inflation was low. Countries could trade and grow confidently. The world saw decades of prosperity. Nations rebuilt their cities, expanded their industries, and lifted millions out of poverty, all under the shadow of the strong and stable U.S. dollar. But nothing lasts forever. Cracks in the system, the 1960s and 1970s. As time went on, the U.S. began facing its own problems. The government started spending heavily, especially during the Vietnam War, and on social programs. To fund this, it printed more dollars, but didn't increase its gold reserves. Other countries noticed. They began to doubt whether the U.S. still had enough gold to back all the dollars it had printed. Some countries, like France, started asking for gold in exchange for their U.S. dollars. It was a sign of growing mistrust. The system was under pressure. The Nixon shock, the end of the gold backing. In 1971, U.S. President Richard Nixon made a shocking announcement. He ended the convertibility of the U.S. dollar into gold. This meant you can no longer exchange dollars for gold. The dollar now stands on its own. This moment, called the Nixon shock, officially ended the Bretton Woods system. From that point on, the U.S. dollar became a fiat currency. What is fiat money? Fiat comes from Latin. It means by decree or by government order. Fiat money has no gold behind it. Its value comes from trust in the government that issues it. So now, the US dollar was no longer a receipt for gold. It was a promise, backed only by the economic power and credibility of the US government. Many feared the dollar would collapse, but instead, something surprising happened. The dollar survived and stayed on top. Even without gold, the US dollar remained the dominant currency in global trade and finance. Why? Because the US economy was still the largest in the world. People trusted the US political system and institutions. Most international trade was already priced in dollars. Countries invested in US government bonds, seen as safe. There was no better alternative at the time. So even in a world without gold, the dollar didn't fall. It rose even higher, becoming the most powerful financial weapon in modern history. By now, you've seen how the US dollar became the most important currency in the world. But the story doesn't stop at trade, trust, or even gold. There's a darker, more powerful side to the dollar, one that very few people fully understand. Because when a currency becomes the global standard, it also becomes a tool of control. And in the case of the US dollar, that tool became a weapon. The silent power of the dollar. Here's something few people realize. The US doesn't only use the dollar to trade. It uses the dollar to punish, pressure, and isolate other countries without firing a single bullet. Let's break this down. Every time money moves between banks across countries, for example, when someone in Brazil pays a company in Germany, that payment usually goes through a global messaging system called SWIFT. SWIFT is like the Internet of banking, a network that allows banks to talk to each other and move money. And guess what? SWIFT is controlled by the West with deep U.S. influence. Most of the transactions happen in U.S. dollars. That means the U.S. can see, track, and even block money movement. This is what we call dollar weaponization. Let's look at two real examples. Case 1. Iran. Iran has long had a complex relationship with the U.S., especially regarding its nuclear program. When the U.S. wanted to stop Iran's nuclear ambitions, it didn't send soldiers. Instead, it used the dollar. The U.S. put economic sanctions on Iran. It had Iran's banks removed from SWIFT. Iranian companies couldn't send or receive dollars. Iran couldn't sell oil, which is usually priced in USD. The result? Iran's economy collapsed. All this happened without a single military strike, just financial isolation. Case 2. Russia. In 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, the U.S. and its allies took a similar approach. Russian banks were removed from SWIFT. The ruble crashed in value. Western companies left Russia. Russia was forced to trade in other currencies like the Chinese yuan. Again, the dollar was used as a weapon, quickly, silently, and effectively. The risk of dollar dependence. These actions sent a clear message to the rest of the world. If you go against U.S. interests, we can cut you off from the global financial system. This made many countries nervous. Even those who weren't in conflict with the U.S., they began asking, what if we're next? Why should we depend on one country's currency? Is there a way to trade without using the dollar? And so began a movement that could reshape the future of global finance. The rise of de-dollarization. De-dollarization is the process of reducing reliance on the U.S. dollar for international trade and finance. Let's look at what different countries are doing. Russia and China. Trading oil, gas, and weapons in yuan and ruble, avoiding dollar-based systems, building alternative payment networks. BRICS. Countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, working on a new shared currency for trade, inviting more countries to join, like Iran, Egypt, and UAE. Their goal? Trade without the dollar. Saudi Arabia. For 50 years, sold oil only in dollars. Now accepting Chinese yuan and Indian rupees. This could weaken the petrodollar system, a major part of the dollar's global dominance. India. Promoting the rupee for trade with countries like Russia, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh, signed a rupee dirham agreement with the UAE. The digital shift, central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. Another response to dollar dominance, CBDCs, digital versions of national currencies issued by central banks. Examples, digital yuan, China, e-naira, Nigeria, digital rupee, India. These digital currencies can be used for cross-border payments without needing dollars or SWIFT. Even the International Monetary Fund, IMF, admitted that dollar dominance is shrinking slowly. But despite all these efforts, why the dollar still reigns? Even with growing resistance, the dollar is still the king. Why? Global trust. Most people and governments still believe the U.S. will protect their money. U.S. bonds, countries, and investors buy U.S. debt because it's considered safe and stable. Dollar habit. Contracts, loans, and prices are already in dollars. Changing that system takes time. Lack of alternatives. Yuan is tightly controlled by China. Euro has political divisions. Crypto is too volatile. Even countries that are critical of the U.S., like Venezuela, Iran, and North Korea, still use dollars for black market and international trade. That's how powerful and deeply embedded the dollar really is. As the world entered the late 1990s and moved into the early 2000s, a quiet but powerful transformation began. It wasn't led by governments or banks. It wasn't a result of war or diplomacy. This time, technology was in charge, and it was about to change the meaning of money. Again, the digitalization of banking. The first wave of change came with digital banking. People began to open bank accounts online, transfer money via apps, and check balances on their phones. Physical cash started to disappear slowly. Let's say you live in Germany and want to send $100 to your friend in Canada. Now, you don't need to go to a bank, carry cash, or wait in line. With tools like Wise, PayPal, or your banking app, you can send money in seconds. And your friend receives Canadian dollars, not euros. No coins, no paper, just numbers moving on a screen. That's when money became data. The rise of cards and mobile wallets. Next came debit and credit cards. Little pieces of plastic that could be used in shops, restaurants, airports, online stores. Then came mobile wallets, Apple Pay, Google Pay, Samsung Pay. With just a tap, you could buy groceries, pay for coffee, or book flights, all without using cash. People no longer thought about money as something in your hand. It was now just a number in your account, managed by banks and tech companies. The price of convenience, centralized control. While this system made life faster and easier, it also gave enormous power to governments and banks. Why? Because now they controlled the flow of money, access to money, rules about how money could be used. At any moment, your account could be frozen, limited, tracked, or even blocked. And then, something dramatic happened. 2008, the global financial crisis. In 2008, the world faced a major financial crash. Big banks collapsed. Housing markets crashed. Millions lost jobs. Governments printed billions of dollars to save the banks and companies. Many people felt betrayed. Why are we saving the banks that caused the crisis? Why is my money losing value? Why do we have no control over this system? And out of that frustration, a new idea was born. The birth of Bitcoin, digital money without a master. In late 2008, someone, or a group, using the name Satoshi Nakamoto, introduced a new digital currency, Bitcoin. What made it special? No central bank, no government, limited supply. Only 21 million will ever exist. No borders, no need for trust in a middleman. Bitcoin was powered by a new technology called blockchain, a public digital ledger where every transaction is recorded and can't be changed. For the first time in history, people had a way to store and send money without banks, without approval, and without inflation caused by printing. It was like digital gold, secure, limited, and independent. The explosion of crypto, a new financial frontier. Bitcoin opened the door, but soon other cryptocurrencies followed. Ethereum introduced smart contracts. Tether, USDT, a stablecoin linked to the US dollar. Solana, XRP, Cardano, and thousands more. Each offered a different feature: faster payments, lower fees, new tools. People saw a new financial future. No banks, no inflation, full control. But governments saw a threat. The government pushed back. Crypto was borderless and unregulated. That meant it could be used for crime, money laundering, tax evasion, escaping sanctions. So, many countries began to ban crypto trading, restrict mining operations, create laws to control crypto platforms. But the idea was already out. Millions of people had tasted financial freedom, and they didn't want to go back. The foundation of Web3 and DeFi. As crypto grew, it gave birth to entire ecosystems. Web3, a new vision of the internet, where users own their data and money. DeFi, decentralized finance, tools for lending, borrowing, saving, and investing, all without banks. NFTs, digital ownership for art, music, and more. Money was no longer just for banks and governments. It became code, controlled by communities, stored in digital wallets, and moved through blockchains. But there's a catch: volatility and risks. Crypto is powerful, but it's also unstable. Prices rise fast and fall even faster. Hacks and scams exist. Regulations are unclear. It's not easy for everyone to use. And here's the twist. Even in this new crypto world, most prices are still measured in dollars. One Bitcoin hits 30,000. One Ethereum equals 2,000. So, even the future of money still whispers in the voice of the dollar. In the last part, we explored how Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies gave people a new sense of financial freedom, a way to escape banks, avoid inflation, and own their money. But freedom also comes with chaos. Crypto markets were unpredictable. Some coins became worthless overnight. Others were hacked, banned, or crashed. So while many loved the freedom, governments began to worry. They saw crypto as a threat, not just to the financial system, but to their control over money. And so they came up with a new plan. If people want digital money, let's give it to them, but we'll be the ones in charge. This is how CBDCs were born. What is a CBDC? CBDC stands for Central Bank Digital Currency. It's not crypto. It's not Bitcoin. It's not built for speculation or wild price changes. A CBDC is a digital version of a country's official currency, created and controlled by that country's central bank. Think of it like this: digital dollar, USA; digital yuan, China; digital rupee, India; e-naira, Nigeria; digital euro, European Union. It's real money, but it exists only in digital form. No paper, no coins. How CBDCs work and why they matter. Let's say you're a student in Nigeria, studying in Germany. With a CBDC, your parents could use their phone to send e-naira. You receive it instantly in Germany. The money converts into euros. You use it to pay tuition or buy groceries. All in seconds. No bank fees, no waiting 3 days, no using US dollars or SWIFT. That's the power of CBDCs. Fast, efficient, trackable. Why governments love CBDCs. Speed and efficiency. No more delays in cross-border payments. No dependence on the SWIFT system. Real-time transfers. Financial inclusion. Even people without bank accounts can use CBDCs via mobile phones. Trackable transactions. Governments can see where money goes, helping reduce crime, tax evasion, and money laundering. Programmable money. Money can have built-in rules, expire after a certain time, be used only for specific things, be blocked or reversed instantly if stolen. To governments, CBDCs are a dream, efficient, secure, and fully under control. But there's a dark side. With power comes danger. What if a government decides where you can spend your money, or freezes your wallet because you joined a protest, or sets expiration dates on savings to force you to spend? CBDCs raise serious questions about privacy freedom, surveillance, economic control, because unlike cash, which is anonymous, CBDC money can be watched and restricted. The global shift. Who's leading the race? As of now, over 130 countries are exploring or testing CBDCs. Some examples. China has launched the digital yuan in dozens of cities. India is testing the digital rupee in banks and e-commerce. Nigeria already launched the e-naira. The European Union is working on a digital euro. Even the United States is studying a digital dollar model. This isn't just a trend, it's a global financial shift. And in this shift, countries are trying to reduce dependence on the US dollar and build their own digital power. The clash. CBDCs versus crypto. Here's where it gets interesting. CBDCs are centralized. Governments control them. Crypto is decentralized. No single authority. Both are digital. Both are fast. But their philosophy is opposite. CBDCs are about order and control. Crypto is about freedom and innovation. So the world is now choosing between, do we want fast, secure digital money that can also be monitored, versus do we want digital freedom, even if it comes with risk? It's a battle between central banks and code developers, between governments and communities, between control and choice. What does this mean for you? Whether you live in Paris, Lagos, Delhi, or Jakarta, CBDCs could change your life. You may be paid in digital money. Your taxes may be deducted automatically. You might never touch paper cash again. You could travel without ever visiting an exchange booth. Or, you may one day need permission to spend your own money. That's the paradox of modern money, more powerful than ever, and possibly more controlled than ever. We've traveled far, from barter and bronze coins to digital wallets and programmable money. We've seen money evolve from grains and shells to gold and silver, to paper and plastic, and now to code. But now comes the biggest question of all. What is the future of money? Will the US dollar stay on top? Will the world move to cryptocurrency? Or will we see a multi-currency system where no one currency rules and power is shared? The answer is not simple, because the future of money is no longer just about economics. It's about technology, trust, and global influence. The world is becoming multipolar. In the past, there was usually one dominant currency, the Roman denarius, the British pound, the US dollar. But today, we are entering a multipolar world, a world where many forces shape finance. Different regions are building their own systems. BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, are creating new payment systems and shared currencies. Countries are signing currency swap agreements, trading in local money instead of dollars. African fintech companies are building powerful mobile banking tools for millions without access to banks. Southeast Asian startups are launching crypto wallets faster than governments can regulate them. European nations are pushing for green finance and climate-backed digital assets. No one is waiting for permission. Everyone is writing their own story. What about the US dollar? Despite all these changes, the dollar is still strong. Why? Trust. People believe in U.S. institutions, courts, contracts, the Federal Reserve. Scale. Most global contracts, oil trades, and loans are still in dollars. Habit. Changing systems takes time, decades, not months. Lack of clear alternatives. Crypto is unstable. UN is controlled. Euro is politically divided. So, the dollar will likely remain dominant for years to come, but no longer unchallenged. It's now one power among many, not the only one. Money is now identity. Here's a deeper truth. In the past, money represented value. Now, money also represents identity. Do you use crypto? You probably believe in freedom and decentralization. Do you prefer CBDCs? You value stability and order. Do you hold gold or cash? You may distrust digital systems. Do you invest globally? You think beyond borders. What you choose to hold, whether dollars, Bitcoin, or digital rupees, says something about who you are. And that's a new concept in financial history. What should you do? You might be thinking, this is interesting, but how does it affect me? Let's break it down. Daily life. Your grocery bill, fuel price, and rent are all connected to global currency movements. When the dollar gets stronger, imported goods cost more in your country. When interest rates in the U.S. rise, your government might face a debt crisis. Education. If you're studying abroad, your tuition and living costs may rise or fall based on currency exchange. Student loans and scholarships are affected by currency risk. Jobs and business. If you're a freelancer, remote worker, or small business owner, which currency you get paid in matters. A strong dollar could boost or kill your profit margins. Savings and investments. Saving only in one currency, you may be exposed to devaluation. Many people are building multi-currency portfolios, some in local money, some in crypto, some in stable currencies. Knowledge is your first currency. In this new financial world, understanding is power. You don't need to be a banker or economist, but you do need to ask questions about what money really is. Learn how currencies affect your life. Diversify your income and savings. Stay curious and flexible, because while you may not choose your country's currency, you can choose how much you understand it and how well you prepare. Final words. You are part of history. This has never been just a story about the dollar or gold or crypto. It has always been a story about people and power, about how we assign meaning to something that's not real unless we believe in it, about how trust, once given, becomes the foundation of nations and empires, about how the smallest decisions, a rate change, a new app, a coin design, can ripple into global change. Right now, history is being written, and you're not just watching it, you're part of it. The future of money will be decided by people like you, who learn, who adapt, and who ask, what comes next? Thank you, and final invitation. Thank you for joining this deep journey through the history and future of money. If you learned something today, or if this story opened your mind, please like this video. Comment below. What do you think the future of money will look like? Subscribe to our channel, English Journey, for more meaningful stories that improve your English and your understanding of the world, because when language meets ideas, you grow faster than ever before. See you in the next story.